So I recently just got reading an article on Reddit, and it was really interesting. It stated in an article that was a couple years old, talking about how Google had just surpassed 300,000 miles with their Google car, and actually to current dates are somewhere around 500,000, and how the only accident they've had with the cars when a human operator was in control of it, and it was a fender bender in a parking lot. So then it raises the question, obviously self-driving cars are becoming more prevalent. More companies are testing out the software. There's been rumors that, Tesla CEO and Google are working together to make Tesla cars, partially or proportionally, some of their driving self-driven or automatic. That is just rumor. They don't really know what year that those cars will come out. Again, it's all speculation, but it would be pretty sweet. So it raises the question, how will that change the world that we live in? There was a guy that got quoted on there, and I forget the name of the person, but he talked about how we're in the beginning of a $1 trillion industry. And I was reading, and I was like, well, $1 trillion industry, that's a pretty big market right there. What makes, self-driving cars? I think self-driving cars are pretty sweet. Don't get me wrong. I'm probably one of the biggest advocates of self-driving cars of anyone, probably in my local area. But you have to be able to convince people the reasoning for the promotion and the use of self-driving cars. One of the greatest things about self-driving cars is their ability in a standby mode. And a lot of people don't talk about this, and I think this is a great issue to bring up. You can have a car that would be driven by a human and be corrected by the computer system built in. Now, how do I describe this? Well, essentially, they're kind of like, there's some commercials coming out now with a limited functionality of this. And it would be the instance of, you're driving along and you're talking to your buddy, you're not paying attention, and you start to drive off to their lane. And the car would go beep, 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 and warn you. In the future years, we'd be looking at a car that would instantly analyze where your eyes are looking at, the path that they're looking at on the road, and realize it's not looking at the road, and realize the car is going left of center, and then autocorrect that car without any human intervention. This is the next step. And eventually we'll get to the point where, you'll drive on the interstate and you'll say, get me to location, from Columbus to Cincinnati, and as long as you're on the interstate, the car will drive for you. And then say when you get off, the human has to take back control of the vehicle. And it will be a progressional stage. There's early estimates saying by 2025 we could look at, new models of cars having limited but completely amazing functionality with self-driving cars. Now, again, the word amazing is a term more used by someone that has a favor of an object. But logistically, self-driving cars would be safer. If you look at how many people get killed in car accidents, a lot of them are, someone's driving drunk, which the car would then analyze. Normally, you'd probably have a camera in the car that would look at how many times they're blinking, the eye dilation, and know in the intoxication level of the occupants, and then act accordingly. If it would be necessary to take control of the car, therefore it would do so. And that solves, the drinking problem with cars. If someone's too sleepy, obviously you can tell that by facial recognition, how someone's acting with their verbals, not just verbals, but with their facial features. If someone's tired, they're going to look tired. And those are features that you could program the computer to look at, and then, again, act accordingly. If it realizes you're too tired, it would warn you. The onboard system has detected that you are beyond a level of tiredness allowed limitedly by the law to drive this vehicle. Past this point, the automated computer system will now kick in and drive you to your destination. Something like that would go along. And it would be interesting, if you take out all the dangers of driving while still allowing the human occupants to drive, you really get some features that I think that's going to allow self-driving cars to get their foot in the door. Eventually the end goal would be, you're going to be able to have cars going, the argument I've heard is that you can have self-driving cars going 100, 150 on the interstate, and they can sweep in and out around each other because you have cars talking to each other, using, near-field communication devices, and using, line-of-sight radio communications, that they'd all be communicating this hub, a network, and therefore, you get this really safe driving. But what we must remember is back during the 70s, they actually decreased the speed on the interstates down to 55. And the whole reasoning behind this is the cost of oil. We had less oil coming through, well, not the cost, but the availability, I guess, of the oil. So therefore, they configured that 55 miles an hour was the perfect amount of use out of your engine. Anything over, you're using extra amount of fuel. You're not getting max fuel efficiency. So if you're going 100, your max fuel efficiency, even the best cars today, are probably 60, maybe. So you're going to be using more gasoline, so therefore you're consuming more gasoline, you're paying more. But if you can get to your destination quicker, is it worth it? So while there are a lot of great possibilities that come out of self-driving cars, and I kind of stated some of the ways I think it will get its foot in the door and how we'll start to slowly see self-driving cars creep into the marketplace without too many people really clicking and realizing it, I do think there are other side effects that some people are so optimistic they don't want to look at that, are going to be effects. Now, I also know the argument, well, if we're switching to battery-powered cars by 2025, then gas consumption levels won't matter because the power in the batteries will be charging the wheels, and you won't have any combustion engine, which is true, but you'd be using more power from the batteries, therefore having less, time in between charges. But then, the counter argument then is, well, you'll have more charging stations, and there'll be quicker, fast charges, and we'll have all this figured out, and there could be. One of the things we always realize in history is we foresee things we think are going to be out in the future or going to come along in the next 10, 15 years, and we don't foresee other inventions that come along with it or modifications of things that are already existent. And so things that appear to be perfectly defined of what the future will look like completely change. Nobody really would tell you in the 1900s that computers were going to completely take over thousands, if not millions of jobs. It's just something that you can't predict the invention of or the modification of. As of self-driving cars, there might be differences of how transport gets around. Trains might be able to more efficiently travel that cargo, so therefore if someone's already off the road, therefore the limit, the congestion on the interstate is less already, But there is an interesting question to pose, and I think it's one that we should be looking at. Self-driving cars are coming, battery cars are coming. It is, are you willing to close your eyes and imagine that it's not coming, or are you ready to embrace it fully and say, okay, we are going to have self-driving cars in the next 25 years. We are going to have battery-powered cars prevalent in American society and other societies, as in, the first world countries. How do we best prepare ourselves as a society and as individuals so that we are fully ready to embrace the new technology advances and the ability of self-driving cars, and then also the mindset of preparing ourselves for the cultural shock of having self-driving cars? Because a lot of people, when they get 16, they're ready to get their license, and it might be, it's no different than when you're 12 because the car drives for you, and it's only legal to drive, human operator on dirt roads or on a racetrack. So who really knows? Thanks for watching.